For the first time in over a century, Americans are leaving big cities faster than they are arriving. Not by a small margin either. Between 2020 and 2023, cities like New York, San Francisco, and Chicago each lost hundreds of thousands of residents. New York alone shed over 500,000 people in just 3 years. That is not a blip. That is a seismic shift in how and where people choose to live. And the story behind why it is happening is far more complicated and far more interesting than you think. In the next 10 minutes, you are going to discover exactly why this mass migration is happening, which smaller cities are winning the most, and what it means for the future of housing, jobs, and entire economies. We will dig into the data, look at real places where this transformation is already underway, and explore the one counterintuitive truth that most urban planners and economists are only now starting to admit. The surprising part is not that people are leaving big cities. The surprising part is who is leaving, and what they are building when they arrive somewhere new. To understand why this is happening now, you have to understand what drove people to big cities in the first place. For most of the 20th century, opportunity was concentrated. If you wanted a high-paying job, access to culture, top-tier healthcare, or a network of ambitious professionals, you moved to a major metro. New York had Wall Street and fashion. Los Angeles had entertainment. San Francisco had tech. Chicago had finance and manufacturing. The logic was simple: go where the jobs are. And for decades, that logic held up. Cities grew, property values soared, and the dream of urban life attracted millions of people every single generation. But something started cracking underneath that model long before the pandemic ever arrived. Between 2010 and 2020, the cost of living in major American cities rose at a rate that outpaced wage growth by a significant margin. In San Francisco, the median one-bedroom apartment hit over $3,000 per month. In Manhattan, it crossed $4,000. Meanwhile, median salaries in those cities, while higher than the national average, were not doubling alongside rent prices. People were working harder just to stay in place. The math was getting brutal. Then 2020 happened. And it did not create this trend. It accelerated it by about 20 years overnight. When remote work became not just possible but mandatory for millions of knowledge workers, the fundamental reason most people lived in expensive cities evaporated almost instantly. If your job could be done from a laptop, why were you paying $5,000 a month to do it in a tiny apartment in a city you could barely afford? That question, once asked, could not be unasked. And millions of people answered it by packing their things and heading somewhere else. But where exactly is somewhere else? This is where the data gets genuinely fascinating. The cities gaining the most population are not random. There is a clear pattern. Places like Boise, Idaho; Huntsville, Alabama; Greenville, South Carolina; Spokane, Washington; Fort Wayne, Indiana; Chattanooga, Tennessee. These are not world-famous destinations. Most people outside their regions could barely find them on a map 5 years ago. But they share a specific combination of qualities that make them almost irresistible to people escaping expensive metros. They have relatively affordable housing, growing job markets, decent infrastructure, and enough cultural amenities to keep educated professionals engaged. That last point matters more than most people realize. Boise grew by over 15% between 2018 and 2023. Huntsville, which reinvented itself around aerospace and defense, added over 20,000 new residents in the same window. Greenville, South Carolina attracted major manufacturing investment, while simultaneously building a walkable downtown that genuinely rivals cities 3 times its size. These are not accidental success stories. They are the result of deliberate policy. Decisions, investment in public spaces, and an understanding that talent follows quality of life. So what exactly are people getting when they move to these smaller cities? First and most obviously, they are getting space. A family that spent years in a 2-bedroom apartment in Chicago can suddenly afford a 4-bedroom house with a backyard in Chattanooga for the same monthly payment. That is not a small quality of life upgrade. For families with kids, that is transformational. Second, they are getting time back. Average commute times in smaller cities are dramatically lower than in major metros. When you stop spending 2 hours a day on a train or in traffic, you get that time back for your family, your health, and your interests. Over a year, that adds up to hundreds of hours of your life. But here is what nobody talks about enough. The people moving to smaller cities are not just retirees looking for a quieter life. The dominant demographic driving this migration is educated, remote working millennials aged roughly 28 to 42. These are people at the peak of their earning years, bringing salaries that were calibrated to San Francisco or New York, and spending them in economies where the cost of everything is dramatically lower. A software engineer earning $180,000 a year in Austin or New York who moves to Boise is not taking a pay cut. They are getting a massive effective raise because their purchasing power triples. And those high incomes are rippling through local economies in ways that are reshaping entire regions. This is the part where the story gets more complicated and honestly more interesting. Because this migration is not painless for the places receiving all these new residents. When high-earning remote workers move into affordable cities in large numbers, they drive up housing costs. Boise saw home prices increase by over 60% between 2019 and 2022. Longtime residents who were not earning Silicon Valley salaries suddenly found themselves priced out of neighborhoods they had lived in for decades. The same displacement dynamic that made people leave San Francisco is beginning, at a smaller scale, in the cities they escaped to. It is one of the most important and underreported consequences of this entire movement. This raises a real question that urban economists are wrestling with right now. Can smaller cities absorb this influx without destroying the affordability that made them attractive in the first place? The answer seems to depend heavily on how aggressively those cities build new housing. Places that have embraced zoning reform and permitted large amounts of new construction have managed to keep prices from completely spiraling. Places that resisted growth have watched affordability erode quickly. Boise learned this lesson the hard way. Cities like Raleigh, North Carolina, and Columbus, Ohio have done a better job of building their way out of the pressure. The economic transformation does not stop at housing. When highly skilled workers relocate to smaller markets, they bring ambition, networks, and capital with them. Startup ecosystems are emerging in cities where none existed a decade ago. Venture capital investment in so-called emerging tech hubs outside the traditional coastal corridors doubled between 2018 and 2023. Cities like Austin, already a major metro, have become legitimate rivals to San Francisco in certain technology sectors. But even smaller markets like Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Madison, Wisconsin are seeing genuine entrepreneurial activity that would have seemed impossible 15 years ago. What does this mean for the big cities themselves? Interestingly, it does not mean they are dying. New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago are still enormous, globally significant cities. But they are changing. The people who remain in these cities increasingly fall into two categories. Those wealthy enough that cost is not a concern, and those who depend on in-person work in industries like healthcare, construction, hospitality, and service. The middle-income professional class, the teachers, the mid-level managers, the young creatives who once gave cities their energy and character, those people are leaving in disproportionate numbers. And that hollowing of the middle may be the most consequential long-term trend of all. The future of American geography is almost certainly more distributed than it has been in generations. Not because big cities failed, but because technology finally gave people a real choice. And when people have a real choice, they make decisions based on what actually matters to them: space, affordability, safety, community, and time. For a growing number of people, those things are simply more available somewhere smaller. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Flash Trend for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.